and welcome to the first of several videos related to describing the system admin and teacher coaching processes around initiating standards-based grading in the school district using two applications, SbG Teacher View Gradebooks and Illuminate Data and Assessments. So I'm going to start by taking a look at, from the curriculum side of things, understanding the teacher input of student performance data. So I've pulled up here their math curriculum site, and let's take a look at a grade 1 math example. So if we open up their first unit, or module 1 as it's called in this curriculum, you can see the end of module assessment here. Okay, so the module assessment is one that's going to be manually scored by the teacher. It's not one that can be set inside Illuminate for auto scoring. So in this case, you can see the questions, the summary of the standards that are associated with those items, and then you can see that each of the items are scored by a rubric. So if we look at example 1 here, the first question, explain your thinking using pictures, numbers, or words associated with that problem, then you can see 1 is scored on a rubric of the student correctly solves the added unknown, explains thinking by drawing pictures or writing, writes an equation, and then the level of performance goes down from there. So for example, solves the relationship correctly, but can't explain his or her thinking in other forms. Or perhaps that the student is demonstrating beginning concepts of understanding, but provides an inaccurate answer, as opposed to the lowest level. The student has a limited ability to both explain and answer correctly. So it's a rubric-based scoring system that is really the basis for all of the data entry that follows, both in Illuminate Data and Assessments and in the SbG Teacher View Gradebook. So this is essential that in coaching the teachers, they know that they're not doing total point scoring or percentages in a traditional grading scheme. They're really looking at the student's work, associating it with descriptions of performance levels, and knowing that those performance levels will be rated on a 4, 3, 2, 1 scale. If they haven't done that level of work, then there's really nothing we can do until we get them to rescore that and understand that process. Once they have their data scored for each of their students, jump past the answer key. No, this example doesn't have it. Some of the assessments actually have a grid where they can write their students' names down and their scores that follow. But bottom line is, wherever they record it in their own Excel spreadsheet, whether they're doing that in a notebook or on a paper copy that the student has written their answers on, and they write down their 4, 3, 2, 1 in each case down the line, and so forth. They need to have each of those item scores, items 1, item 2, scored on a 4, 3, 2, 1. We can then jump into Illuminate. Let me resize my screen a little bit here so you can see all of what I'm seeing. Okay, so inside Illuminate, these assessments have already been created for them. They all contain that MOD nomenclature for the modules, so that's an easy way to filter down. Let me back up for a moment. So I got here from my dashboard by going to the assessments and then list assessments. Once I'm on this screen, I want to clear all my filters and then type in that MOD to narrow it down to just those that contain this phrase in the title. So I'll search, and you can see a whole mess of them follows. I can sort by the title and perhaps get down to the ones I know are represent the district assessment. So starting down here. So I'm going to go to grade 1, module 1 end assessment. You can see that there's student data already in here. So this is an easy way to distinguish between assessments that teachers have already scored versus those where there's no data entry yet. So let's jump in here and take a look at both the process of entering the data as well as the use of the reports. Actually, let me back up and go to one that doesn't have scores yet so we can look at the data entry. Let me just jump back a screen. And we'll pick one out here that doesn't have any data. And this is the screen that'll pop up if no data has yet been entered. This is prompting them on how they want to get data in for this assessment. Do they want to schedule it for the students to take online? Do they want to scan it in using the grade cam? Do they want to manual enter or import it? Now, because again, these can't be scanned via bubble sheets or done online for auto scoring. Now, theoretically, they could still take it online and write their answers in that space, but it's going to be more cumbersome, especially for the younger grades. So we go to enter right here. Now, this menu of options you see is under the title administer, so you can find all these same options under administration right here. Enter, edit, import, online testing. So if we go to enter, edit, which is the same as enter down here, then the teacher isn't going to see all of these sites. They'll be within a site already, but I'll go ahead and narrow it down. They need to start by choosing which students they're going to enter scores for. So they need to narrow down to a class, and I'll just jump down one here. I was in a kindergarten assessment, so I go to the early L. And all right, so here's a group of students. And we hit find, and we've got them all listed right there. So what we want to do then, I'm going to, for the sake of there are different options. I mean, as far as entry goes, they can change the column, like by item. So this is item A, and they're entering the scores, and then they switch them all to item B. They can do that by student, and one student at a time. They can enter all 4 item scores and then switch to the next student. They can see all of this, though, in the grid. I find this is the one that teachers tend to like best. So here they just go right down the row and enter their score. They can enter the 4, or they can choose it from the list. Maybe the next one is a 3. They can start from the list, selecting that, or they can edit it just by typing it in, etc. So they get their scores entered here, and it auto saves. Although there is a save button up top that they can utilize, but every few seconds it auto saves. So that's the process of entering their item scores. Now let's go to reports. So for this, I'm going to go back to my assessment list. And we're going to choose the one that has assessment results in it. Let's take a look at how the test is constructed as well, because sometimes settings are off and we need to help the teacher in adjusting those. So we can get into the details or setup and take a look to make sure, for example, that they have the right performance band. And if they don't, they can manage that here. This breaks down their performance levels for their students on each item as well as overall on the test. And they can change that through this link. And then also the standards associated with the items located right here. And again, they can manage those here, or they can do so associated with each question, managing the questions, the standards, and point values. On a rubric-based assessment, it should be listed as 4 and 4 to match the range of scores that we can put in. It should be listed as a yes, it's a rubric-based question, and have the right standards associated with each item, and having the performance band associated with a 4-point rubric as well. So all of these need to be in place to have the reports function accurately. So let's take a look at a report. The two that I recommend are either the student overview report or the student small slips report. Either way, it's going to break down the results for the students on how they did by standard based on that 4-3-2-1 performance level. So if you get the question, I already entered the scores, why do I need to pull up a report to enter them again? Well, it's understanding that what they entered was a score for each item. Now, an item might be associated with more than one standard, or they might have multiple items associated with the same standard. So we're relying on Illuminate DnA to do the math to aggregate that data, and whereas we put in a 4-3-2-1 for questions 1, 2, 3, or A, B, C, it's going to show us how they did on each standard. So if we select the student overview report, the first thing to do is again to narrow it down to the students that we want to look at. So we choose a class. And view. Okay. Now you're going to see this blue bar while it's generating the report, and as soon as it's done processing, we'll get notice of that, and we can scroll down to view it. So the report is finished, and now we can scroll down and start viewing the report.